Well, Josh, it's great to see you. Here we are in Folkestone.
Oh,
What a beautiful day. Sea in front of us, tea beside us,
yeah.
and what more can we
What
ask for?
more can you want? This is a lovely location. The sea
Really is.
reflecting in. Perfect.
So, tell us how it all started, Josh. You come from a Christian family, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, my parents became Christians around about 10 years before I was born, from totally non-church families.
Yeah.
They actually became Christians because of a church plant onto the housing estate where they live.
Right.
From the local Anglican church. It's in Tunbridge Wells, and they decided to start going to the church totally out of the blue.
Right.
And they discovered Jesus to be real in their lives. And so by the time I was born, they'd been going to church for 10 years,
Wow.
which was great for me because it got me off to a really good start in life. And just being brought up. I think I probably went to church maybe week 2 or 3 of my life.
Yeah.
Just been there ever since.
You know, obviously a lot of people go through difficulties when they get to teenage years, don't they? You know, like start off really well and, oh yeah, this is great. You know, love all the fun stuff that they do for kids. And then you get to teenage years and people wander, shall we say. What about you? Did you?
I've never wandered away from God ever. I mean, I think it's just, to me, it's just part of who I am because I grew up with it.
Yeah.
To deny God's existence in my life would almost be to deny myself, because I feel like he's so much a part of me because he's always been there. And I can remember very young praying with my mum to accept Jesus into my life for myself. I've got a very vivid memory of sitting on the bottom of our stairs in our hallway praying with my mum. I think I was about 5 years old.
Wow.
And then when I was about 11 years old, had my real first encounter with the Holy Spirit in a real way when I was away at a youth camp. And I remember just being filled with the Spirit of God for the first time, really, in that way. And just the impact that had on me. I immediately went back, began to tell all of my friends who lived near us on the housing estate that I grew up all about Jesus, started dragging them along to the youth group. Many of those became Christians.
Really?
Lots of them. And so there was a large group of us all through my teenage years who were all going to church together. And I think because of that, that really helped, to be honest, because I wasn't dragged away from church by bad influence, because there was a big group of us, maybe 10, 15 of us, who would meet together on the estate. We'd walk to church, we'd walk to the youth group together, and we'd even meet and pray in the park together. Yeah, when I was like 15, 16 years old, there'd be a big group of us meet in the bus shelter. People thought we were up to no good.
Having a quick bang.
Yeah, everyone probably assumed all sorts of things. Nobody knew we were actually praying for our local area.
Oh, we've got some real bad lads down there.
Yeah,
Have you seen them all gathering together?
Keep away from there. But actually, we were all praying, and we used to just love doing it. I mean, it was just something we loved to do. So because of that, I obviously didn't have a perfect teenage childhood, but I never went away from God because of that. I think because there was that close group of people. And we all spurred each other on.
From the bus shelter, what was your next step?
I always enjoyed performing and being in front of people. I discovered that when I went to secondary school. I was actually very shy at primary school and would never have done anything like that. But in secondary school, I got involved in the local performances and productions that my school would do. And so I got involved in that and discovered that I really enjoyed doing that. So I got involved in as much of that as I possibly could, and then at the end of my GCSEs decided to do a performing arts course at the same school, so I stayed to do that, and then around about the same time as that started volunteering at church, helping out with the youth group, and then eventually the youth worker that we had moved away, and then I took on running the youth group at 17.
I was going to say, what age?
17 years old, and in fact the church had to have an adult come to the youth group, to look after, to make it legal, basically. Right. So I ran the whole thing, planned it all, did everything, but we had to have an actual adult there because I wasn't one yet. I don't think I'm one now. So that was my first experiences of getting involved in kind of doing things for God, volunteering. So we started running an event called ID, which was a big concert. And we'd got about 800 kids every month to it. and I'd present it, and we'd get all the top bands in at that point, people like Y Friday and Philippa Hanna and all these people. And we'd pack out one of the local churches, and we'd get about 800 kids, and lots of people became Christians through that. So
Fantastic.
yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you started getting involved with drama and all that sort of thing. So did you think of going down that road of...
Yeah, I did. I just thought I'll go to drama school.
Yeah.
That's what I decided I was going to do. And then, to be totally honest, it was too expensive.
Right.
It just was totally unaffordable. My parents aren't very well off. Well, like I said, we lived on a council estate in Tunbridge Wells. There was literally no way I could afford it. So I kind of put that on the back burner and decided that I would get a job when I left school that meant I could work as much as I could at church for nothing.
Yeah. Right.
So I got a job as, well, first of all, as working in the school canteen that I just left. And to me, it made total sense because
They could feed you.
they could feed me as well. Yeah, absolutely. I was in charge of the chips, which was always good. But to me, it made total sense because I left, and then it meant I could volunteer at the church. But of course, many other people didn't understand what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I remember the shutters going up, for the first break time servery is the beginning of September. And some of my teachers who had been teaching me last year saw me, and they were just the look of disappointment on their face.
Really?
Like, what is Josh doing in there? Like, he's got all this potential. But of course, I knew that God had told me to work at the church and volunteer.
Yeah.
So to me, it made total sense. Then I started travelling down to Folkestone, where Gareth and Sarah Webber are, the pastors of Harbour Church now. Sarah Webber had been my youth worker in Tunbridge Wells. Gareth had been the assistant pastor in Tunbridge Wells. They'd moved to Folkestone. And at the same time, Gareth's sister Anna also started doing the same thing. Now, we knew each other a little bit from church in Tunbridge Wells. She'd actually moved away to Cranbrook, not that far from Tunbridge Wells, where she was a school teacher. And we both started coming down to Folkestone. And then I remember at one point saying to either Gareth or Sarah, "Oh, is Anna coming down this week?" And they said no. And I suddenly thought, why am I disappointed? And Anna is a bit older than me. So she had been a teacher. She'd gone to university, qualified as a teacher. So she was 25. And I just started thinking, Josh, forget it. I mean, what are you even talking about? We then had a whole week together here in Folkestone, where we ran a holiday club with Gareth and Sarah. And I remember we went over to France for the day on the ferry, just had a real good time together. And I started thinking, oh, okay, maybe there is something in this. Maybe it's not just my imagination. Yeah. And I remember she went back to work and I stayed here in Folkestone for another few days, so I didn't have to go back. And she was going to come back down. So those 3 days, I thought, I need to kind of message her. And I messaged her, miss you. And I sent it. And it took me ages to send. I remember staring at the screen for ages. Finally hit send, nothing. She didn't reply.
I didn't miss you.
No, and I thought, oh no, I've blown it. What have I done? But basically, unbeknown to me, she was kind of in a bit of a panic about it because she was also missing me and didn't know what to say back. So she kind of left me hanging a bit, which was a bit mean. But then she came back to Folkestone and we started going out with each other. And in fact, within 18 months, had got married.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And all these years later?
All these years later. In fact, we're just about to celebrate 20 years.
20 years?
Next month.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
And now you've got 3 kids?
Yeah. So 3 children now.
Half a dozen cats?
Yeah, lots of cats, tortoises, budgies. Like Noah's Ark in our house.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because I moved to Folkestone, we got married, and I got a job working for a local youth charity here called What For, which was connected in with Cheriton Baptist Church, and a guy called Dave Barker. And I started working for him, and we did lots of schools work and started doing the holiday clubs. We'd often make up characters for the holiday clubs, dress up, put silly wigs on, maybe tell a Bible story or whatever. And one of the mums came up to me afterwards and she said, "Oh, Josh, Toby's been loving your character at the holiday club. It's his birthday party next weekend. I wonder whether you'd come and do that character at his birthday party." I said, "You must be joking." I said, "No way I'm doing that." I said, "I'm just messing around." She said, "No, whatever you're doing," he's been talking about it all week. you've been making him laugh, and he wants you at his birthday party. So I was like, right. She said, I'll pay you. I thought, I was like, really? You'll pay me? She said, yeah, I'll pay you. So I went and did this birthday party at St John's Church Hall. I remember it well. And I thought, do you know what? That was actually really fun. And I got paid. So I thought, do you know what? I wonder if there's a little gap here. Yeah. So I came up with 6 characters. And my brother's a graphic designer. So he made me a website, made me some little flyers. And I just started giving them out. And so people started ringing me up. Oh, hello, seeing your flyer. So I called the business Joshing Around.
Right.
And I launched it. And it slowly started building up. And it got to a point where I was doing them and it was starting to get in the way of my paid work that I was doing as well. So I made the decision to go part-time and do these parties as well. And then it carried on getting in the way. And then I eventually went full-time doing the children's parties, which I did for 5 years full-time. And at its peak, I was doing 30 to 40 parties a month.
Golly.
And it just went mad. I mean, it was difficult to keep up with. I mean, sometimes I'd do 5 birthday parties in a day.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I'd get in the car and I'd drive to different places in Kent, and I'd go all the way around, and then I'd come home. And in those days, I was a lot younger, so I don't know how I did that. I mean, it's just crazy, but I loved it, and so I did that for a long time.
So, what changed?
Well, what was interesting was at the same time as that, I was still volunteering at church, still doing the things I was doing at church, and then I had started volunteering at the local Christian bookshop on a Wednesday, and I'd always joked with my wife that I'd wanted to run a shop. And so I said, totally randomly to my wife, oh, if ever Mary, the bookshop manager, decided to leave, I might be like to take on the shop. Anyway, a week later, Mary came into the shop. She said, Josh, I want a word with you. So I thought, oh, what have I done wrong? I upset a customer or something. And she said, I'm thinking of leaving, and we think you would be the person to take on the role. Would you be interested in it? So it was a very difficult decision because the business was going very well, but also I kind of quite enjoyed this idea of working in the local bookshop. So I closed down my business and I started working in the shop. But the problem was that it was at a real difficult time for bookshop. But at that point, the sales of books were plummeting. And of course, a Christian bookshop is a niche within an industry which is on the decline. And so unfortunately, we made the decision to close it, which is really, really difficult decision. In fact, one of the most difficult things I've ever done, I think, in my life. And also took away something that many people actually loved, but not enough people loved.
Yes.
That was the problem.
Yeah.
So that was really, really tough. And I had loads of questions for God, like, why have I done this? Like, have I made a mistake? What was that all about? And sometimes I still ask those questions. So I tried to relaunch the business, but that was very difficult because it relied a lot on momentum. Yeah. And when I'd stopped giving out my flyers at parties, I'd stopped receiving the thing. And also people had been phoning up and I'd been saying no. And then people start using somebody else. And so it was very, very difficult. I tried my best to relaunch it, and I diversified into doing educational shows with it in schools. And then round about that time I met you. And I had been trying for a long time to get work on television. Yeah. And so obviously you'd done some television work before as well, filming and production and stuff. So we got chatting, didn't we? We started making videos, filming them around Folkestone in order to create a show reel for me, wasn't it? Yeah, so I had more material so I could send round to the television production companies. So we started doing that, started sending the stuff around. But then the local radio station, Academy FM, noticed the videos because they were getting quite a few views on YouTube. So they invited me in to the studios at the Academy School to basically talk to me about what we were doing and, the people we were interviewing and that kind of thing. So I walked into the radio studio and I thought, wow, this is amazing. Why have I never thought about radio before? And so I thought, you know what? I wonder if I could volunteer and get a radio show. I talked to the man.
Did you still dress up when you're doing the radio show?
Well, I mean, the great thing about radio is no one knows what you're wearing. So I talked to the manager, Dave Sharp, and he said, do you know what? Actually, there's a space come up on a Friday morning. He'd already seen that I could present because of the YouTube stuff. So he said, the show is yours if you want it. You can have it next week. So I started to do that radio show, get more and more sort of skills on driving the desk and doing the presenting and learning some of the technical stuff. Then I started, as a result of that, going up to BBC Radio Kent on a Sunday morning, doing their religious affairs programme where I'd be on a panel and be fired questions at from people. And that was really fun. And then at BBC Radio Kent, there was a newsreader there called Esther. And Esther also works for Premier Christian Radio. Right. And Esther's children have also been at youth camps that we have run. And one day she said to me, Josh, there's a job on Premier Christian Radio. It's a drive time job, and I think you should apply for it. I was like, really? She said, definitely. I definitely think you should apply. So I put together a voice reel from some of the stuff that I've been doing, applied, and to my total surprise, got through to the last 2 people for the job. And they actually gave it to somebody else. So I was quite disappointed. But they said to me, we really like your style and we actually want you on the station. So would you do some cover for us? So this is just at the end of 2019, just before the pandemic. Right. So they said the Saturday breakfast presenter is going to take January off. So we want you to cover the Saturday breakfast shows in January. So I started going up to the studio, learn how to use all the equipment, which was vastly superior to anything I'd used before. And to be quite honest, was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying, like 7 screens in the studio, 2 different playout softwares, 2 different mixing desks. It's just amazing stuff. So I had to very quickly learn how to operate all of that. And then I started covering the breakfast show, and I was the only person in the building. Oh, wow. My first show on national radio, and I'm literally on my own. And I think, if I turn this off, I don't know how to turn it back on again. And so I promise you, I've never been more scared in my life. And I just prayed, and I said, God, you've got to help me. If you've led me to this moment, you've got to, help me here. Yeah. That was in between nearly being sick in the toilet, literally. I'm not even exaggerating. And I did this series of shows, which I one day I'd like to try and listen back to, because I don't think they were probably very good, because I was just so terrified. Interviewing live guests, maybe I won't. Interviewing live guests, but I loved it. Yeah. And I thought, you know what, this is what I love. Yeah. I fell in love with radio in amongst being terrified. I don't really know how that happened, but it did. And so then the pandemic hit, and lots of things changed at the station. They never got back in touch with me. So I thought, I did a bad job. And then just at the end of the first lockdown, July, August time, they contacted me and said, actually, Josh, we'd like to get you back in. Could you start doing some cover in the afternoons? Now, bearing in mind that I'd applied for the drive time job, I didn't get it. Yeah. Then they asked me to start doing some cover in the afternoons, because all the presenters had been moved around. There'd been a lot of change. And so I started working from home. They set me up a little studio at home because it was the pandemic and you couldn't go in. And then I literally started doing my radio show from home. And that is now what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
So you're full-time?
Full-time now. Well, it's freelance work on radio, but most of my job is that one. Yeah. So I basically work for them every afternoon. So I do the 2 till 6 show now, which is funny because that was the role I'd applied for and not got. Yeah. So interesting. And then around that now, lots of other radio work as well. So it's not my only thing I do, but I just absolutely love it.
How has that affected your faith, your walk with God? Because like a lot of people in television, radio, whatever, they get so busy. They can find that they haven't got time for God. They're so busy doing what they believe God wants them to do. They forget who they're doing it for. Does that happen with you at all?
I think it has happened from time to time, because the timetable fills up and you think, I've got to get this done and that done. But I think mostly it's been good for me, because it's Christian radio, which funnily enough I never really wanted to work in. Really? I always felt like I'd rather work in like a mainstream station. But actually, I really, really love it, and it's just an amazing opportunity because I'm doing something I love, but it's got an added purpose to it.
Yeah.
You know, you're changing people's lives who are tuning in, maybe at their darkest moments, and they hear something you say. And so I try to be guided by the Holy Spirit as much as possible when I'm on air. I don't try and get tied up in knots about it, you know, or should I say this, should I say that? I try to just go with the flow and hope that, you know, people are listening who are impacted by what I'm saying through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And there was evidence of this, an amazing story. I went away to do a short-term kind of correspondence course kind of thing with Evangelical Alliance called Public Leadership Conference. And there was about 12 of us who'd signed up to do it. And there was various different residential weekends. So we went to a residential weekend, and this guy was there who'd signed up to do it. And he'd come in late. And as he came in, the leader had just asked me to pray for the group. So he came in, and basically he recognised my voice. And it took him a little while to realise that it was me. And then he came up to me afterwards and he was like, this is going to sound really weird. I've got to tell you this. He said, about 6 months ago, I was at my wit's end mentally, and I was having really dark thoughts, you know. And I just said to the smart speaker, play Christian radio. He said, I didn't even know if it was a thing. He said, I was so desperate, I needed to hear something positive. He said, and the first thing that came on was your voice. He said, and what you said impacted me, and I was able to turn my life around.
Wow.
And since then, I've got a job, and I'm much more steady, and I've been going to church ever since.
Fantastic.
And I don't even remember what I said. But I mean, the radio is so powerful. We've heard some amazing stories through Premier of somebody who bought a car, and the car was jammed. The radio was jammed on Premier Christian Radio, and it wouldn't even switch off. They couldn't turn it down or anything, and they had to.
Josh Carter.
Yeah, so
I want to get rid of him.
Turn him off.
God, don't do this to me.
So they drove around and they became Christian.
Wow.
Because they couldn't turn the radio off. And another story, somebody had it on in their kitchen whilst they had a kitchen fitter working in their house for a week, and he became a Christian.
That's fantastic, Josh. So, you know, obviously we're hoping lots and lots of people are going to watch this and be affected by it.
Yeah.
What would you say to them about a Christian life?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier at the beginning, to me, just having God in my life is just so natural.
Yeah.
And I'm not a religious person at all, but I've discovered something to be so true in my life, that Jesus died for me and he came to give us the best life ever. And that reality is what I want to talk about when I'm on air, what I want to demonstrate when I'm out and about, because I just find it so amazing. And I want people to discover that in their life. And there's so many distractions in the modern world and things that could, hold themselves up to be the same, but actually they're not. They're never the same as the truth of Jesus. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And I love that because he's been the way for me. He's been directing my path for the last 40 plus years. And I just love that. He's the truth. There's so much relativity around. People say, well, this is my truth, this is your truth. But actually Jesus said, well, I am the truth.
There's only one truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't all have different truths.
Yeah, and I love the outrageous claim of that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outrageous to say Jesus said, well, I'm the only way, the only truth. I mean, this day and age, that is an outrageous thing to explore. And I think that's worth exploring.
It is.
And then he says, I'm the life. I mean, that's what I love. I love living life. I love doing things. I love having fun and experiencing life in all its fullness, and getting a little glimpse of heaven on earth every so often, whether I'm down here in the beach hut, in the sea, with my children, whatever I'm doing. And I've just discovered that to be so vital in my life. I just love it.
So, if others wanted to find out how to get this life, what would you say? How do they do it?
Well, do you know what? God is only ever a prayer away. I mean, that's the amazing thing. You don't need to go through some organisation or anything. You can just simply say to God, do you know what? Actually, I've been trying to do this life on my own, and it's not actually going that great. Some days are good, but actually, do you know what, God? I'm sorry for that. And, by the power of your Holy Spirit, would you come and fill me and help me to live a life like Jesus did? The reality of the Christian faith is that God has done X, Y, and Z to get to us. And that is the cross. He came to earth to seek out me and you and anyone watching this, and you think that is amazing. We don't need to do anything other than accept what he's done for us.
That's right.
And sometimes you think, well, that can't be enough.
Yeah.
Surely, like a bit like that imposter syndrome, or are I supposed to be doing something else? Well, actually, no. That's what God has done. And that's the amazing truth of the good news of Jesus.
It is fantastic. Fantastic, Josh. That is great. Thank you so much for doing
No,
this.
thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun. Really enjoyed it.
And I've just got one last question. Could you do a birthday party for me?
80th?
Yeah, I want you to do my 80th. You rock.
Ah, mean.
You're a cad.
Mean. No, I would love to.
Don't lie. Go and repent. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.